What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex. In this video, I thought we'd look back at Mortal Kombat 10 or Mortal Kombat X, a game that came out back in April of 2015. And honestly, you could have fooled me into thinking that this game came out, honestly, over the last couple of years because it looks so freaking good. And to cut it short, and obviously we're going to go much more in depth as the video goes on, I love this game. I actually do think, so far, I'm not all the way through my Mortal Kombat tour yet. We're getting there. This is easily the best Mortal Kombat game I've played. I can honestly say that. I think Mortal Kombat 9 was super, super good. It's a great place for me to have jumped in. I'm very glad that I did. Mortal Kombat versus DC I thought was very good. In some ways, I actually liked it a little bit more. In probably more ways, I liked it a little bit less. But when it comes to Mortal Kombat 10, there's really only one part of it that I think is weaker than Mortal Kombat 9. Everything else I think is better, and it is super, super good. I can't believe I was actually going to skip this game. I was originally going to play Mortal Kombat 11 because I didn't own this one, so I actually bought this game. I now own it physically on the PS4, and I'm very glad because, again, I really, really like this game. So before we go too far in, if you guys do like these videos, make sure, as always, you leave the video a like. That certainly helps. And number two, make sure you guys are subscribed. I've done plenty of Mortal Kombat videos already, and like I said, we got a few more. We're going to do Mortal Kombat 11, and I also got one surprise or secret one that I'm working on that I'm very excited to. I'm almost done playing it, so I guess to show you guys. All right, so let's talk about this game. Again, first coming out in 2015. This game's big. 24 roster players, 9 players that came in through DLC, and you got some big DLC in terms of Leatherface and Alien and Predator. This game went wild. I thought Mortal Kombat 9 kind of went wild with the DLC. Now, I didn't play the DLC characters. I thought, you know, it's actually relatively cheap. I think it's $5 and you get everybody. You'll get the 9 DLC characters. You get all the costume variations, but ultimately, I've been playing them kind of for the story. I've been experiencing other parts of them, sure, but I've been playing them for the story. Once I'm done, it's like, am I really going to invest? I know it's only $5, but I felt like it wasn't really necessary. Still very, very cool that they introduced all those characters in. And then of the 24 roster characters, I think 8 of them were actually brand new to the franchise. So like when I think of an Aaron Black, I really like him. I remember liking him a lot because he's in Mortal Kombat 11. And Mortal Kombat 11, I actually did play an okay amount of when it first came out. He was always my favorite character. I think his long-range attacks are good. Obviously, he can do some damage up close as well. I didn't know he was new to the franchise doing Mortal Kombat 10. Cassie Cage, you know, a lot of characters that are kind of descendants of characters we already know. There's a lot of them, but also everybody's really good. I like the characters quite a bit. Obviously, this was a massive, massive leap in the visual department, too. You know, you think back, even though it wasn't all that many years, right? So 2011 was Mortal Kombat 9. 2013 was Injustice, and I haven't played Injustice in a very long time, but as I've said in past videos, I remember it, and I remember it not really looking all that great. This game looks phenomenal, like visually, so good. The cutscenes, the fluidity of it. You know, this is actually a game where they introduced, maybe they already introduced it in past games, I don't know, but quick time events. So it'll have some cinematic moments that'll look spectacular, and they'll also have some moments in the cutscenes where you'll press a button, you know, square, triangle, you know, whatever. And I'll talk a little bit more about actually why I like those scenes in a second. But even during those moments where a lot of stuff is going on, it's keeping a pretty high visual level, and then it's moving stuff around and having to interact with you, and different things can happen depending on if you press the button right or not. It's pretty spectacular. Again, I am exaggerating a little bit, but also really not. If you told me this game was from like 2020, 2021, you know, obviously there's been some standout, like visually impressive games, but this game looks so good. And to tell me it was 2015, I would have guessed it was later. I would have guessed this was like 17 to 19, you know, somewhere in that area. I guess Mortal Kombat 11 a little bit later than that, right? I'm very excited to play that game. The one part of this game that I do think is weaker, and I'm going to bring it up now because it's something obviously I like to talk about quite a bit in these videos, the story. The story of this game is not as good as Mortal Kombat 9 story. It is good, but it just doesn't have the same feel. I think there's something special to the idea of literal Mortal Kombat. Now, I do very much appreciate that this is a continuation of 9, and which I guess what that means, so many characters are dead. Now, when you play them, you know, against the AI, when you're practicing, when you're just doing versus battles, you know, they'll have their classic kind of outfits. in the game, so many of them are dead and have that kind of look to them, which is very cool. And I like to see those kind of ramifications, right? That Raiden and all that stuff that happened in 9, like, that's impacted them so much. In fact, it's because of those events that they had to have so many either like offspring characters or just characters you've never seen before, because you ran out of characters. There's so many of them that are dead that you can't, I guess they're not accessible to you. One part that was actually a little weird regarding those dead characters is there's that time where the spell is broken, Quan Chi, and it releases the ones that are like there in front of them. Now I thought because they really don't explain it, and then they also like have nobody talk to them about it, where it's like, Jax was dead, now he's alive. They mention it like once or twice, kind of as like a throwaway joke line, but it's like, you've been dead for like 20 years. Like, it's been so long since you've been alive. You have nothing. Like, you don't have to go through some sort of emotional thing. Obviously, the game doesn't exactly do that, but that part I kind of found a little bit funny. But I do appreciate that. I appreciate that there's so many characters that, and even at the end of this game, some of them are still not brought back, right? Some of them are still evil. The ending of this game is really, really good. I like Shinnok, and I believe that's how you say his name. That's how they said it in Mortal Kombat 10. I think he's a great character. I love the idea of this game starting in almost present time, a little bit, after Mortal Kombat 9, and you have, okay, like, really big bad. You knew he was coming because of the ending of Mortal Kombat 9. Obviously, the situation is dire. There's not that many people. You kind of saved the day at the last second. I actually really like that it's Johnny Cage. Again, like, I don't know much about any of these characters, like their lore, or I know who was, like, important. I know, like, mascots of the franchise, but it's cool to, like, give it to him. And then, obviously, you jump forward, and a lot happens, and at the same time, like, nothing happens, right? There's, like, rebellions going on. There's task forces that were started. You have, like, the offspring characters of the original group, and you go through that. This is their time really to introduce a couple new characters to it. And then, obviously, Shinnok, that whole thing kind of comes back with the medallion kind of being passed around a few times. Now, ultimately, Raiden was tasked with, or he tasked himself with protecting that thing. And that was another thing they kind of skimmed by. They skimmed by people just coming back from the dead after 2 decades plus. They also skimmed by, I think he says it to Sonya, or he says it to somebody, that, like, it was replaced with a very good look-alike medallion. So under his nose, the medallion that holds a fallen elder god gets swapped with something that looks relatively the same. He doesn't notice, and like the entire world, or all the realms, I guess technically, are in danger. So they also very much underutilize Raiden, and while I love the visual jumps that they made with a lot of these characters, you have characters that need to look older or need to get older, right? So you have like Sonya and Johnny Cage, like they've obviously aged up. They all look so much better. Like I said, visually, this game is fantastic. Scorpion's design, holy dear Jesus, it's good. Like, there's a lot of really good stuff. Raiden's switch, like how he looks in this game, he's kind of a little off-putting. Now, he's actually one of my favorite characters to play in this game, but how he looks is very, very, very different. And I know, obviously, it's a graphical leap, but it's just, I don't know. They did some weird stuff with him compared to Mortal Kombat 9. Pretty much everybody else I'm completely okay with. But, again, I mentioned the relative weakness of this story compared to 9. I know I'm kind of just recapping it at this point. 9, because it was such an easy entryway into the series, and it has this multiverse thing, which kind of feels timely now, I guess nowadays. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to go through some of the events of the past games, but it's really a really good introduction into all of these characters that for many, they've already known. But for, say, somebody like me, we start to figure out relationships, what's going on here, and just introductions, I guess, just in general of all these characters. It's a great starting out point. And it's all in the backdrop of a literal Mortal Kombat tournament. Now, there's some like cheating that's going on and some rule breaking that happens, but generally it is like the tournament of Mortal Kombat. Whereas in this one, again, it's more rebellions, this evil force that a medallion kind of holds him, and you need to get it back. You need to kind of protect it, and it's good. I will say it's definitely fine. It's just not as good as Mortal Kombat 9. Now, everything else I think is better, and visually, I think the characters overall are better in this. I would also say the acting. Mortal Kombat 9 still is pretty darn good acting. Playing Mortal Kombat versus DC right after that, I realized, okay, they took a step up. From that game to Mortal Kombat 9, there's a big step up. I'm playing a certain older game from like the mid 2000s. Obviously, there's a huge step up from that to these games. But Mortal Kombat 10 feels like it's where they kind of get their legs. It feels like they know what they're doing, and people are really giving it their all. The consistency is there, not just with like 5 characters, but really with pretty much everybody. All the characters in this game are very good. And as I said, the newcomers, I don't know if they're as strong as the OGs. I actually don't think they are, but we're only talking, I guess, about like their character traits. We haven't gotten to the actual fighting part, and that is far and away why I love this game so much, and I think it's the best Mortal Kombat. Now, I didn't know, looking back, like in the history of it, I believe even to this day, it's still the highest selling Mortal Kombat game of all time, and it's also one of the highest reviewed. People really, really like this thing, and it's oftentimes considered by people to be the best Mortal Kombat game. I thought 9 was, I thought other games were, I guess this one is, and again, I'm very, very glad I didn't skip it, but the combat itself, the fighting, this game feels phenomenal. And the visuals, that helps, certainly, but it's when you actually start to pull off these combos. And I found this game to be the least annoying in terms of it. Remember, we've talked about it in every other Mortal Kombat video I've done so far. Seemingly, the AI just kind of knowing. It did happen. It did happen, I would say, maybe 2 or 3 times, but it didn't happen more than that. A handful of times, one might say. No, but I've said in the past, the AI can almost like read you and say, well, you've kind of had some good matches, so we're just going to get you on like a 15-hit combo and absolutely destroy you. That happened all the time in Mortal Kombat 9. It happened all the time in Mortal Kombat versus DC. In this game, it was a lot more tame. I still play it on medium. I beat the game on medium, but you could even skip matches in this one, which I never did. I promise to you, I never did that. I was contemplating it maybe 2 times in the entire game, but no, really, there was no Shao Kahn. Like the ending of 9, I died maybe 10, 15 times. There were a couple battles in Mortal Kombat versus DC. I died maybe 5 to 10 times. This one, maybe 2. I think my longest losing streak was 3. So I really didn't lose all that much. It felt good. Now, I will say, I think I'm getting better. Like, I think I'm understanding combos, both in the air, both on the ground, down, left, blank, down, right, blank, left, right, blank. Like, you start to pull things together. But you know what? And as I've started to realize in this game, it's not just about what I just said. It's about, okay, well, maybe you get them into the air and then maybe you do something else with them, right? Like there is more than just pressing down, left, triangle. That is a move for pretty much any character, but like you can probably follow it up with something else. And I do think I'm getting there. I think I'm getting better. And I guess that's on me. That's not necessarily the game, but I'm going to give it to the game because the game made me feel good. The game had impact. Like I really, really felt like I was hitting these people and they were hitting me. And when you, again, string together these combos, it felt fantastic. The brutalities, right? Seeing the x-ray vision to the skeleton in the body. Oh my God. It was so, they one-up themselves pretty much every time. There were some that were not necessarily tame, but I don't think they were all that incredible for the fatalities. There were plenty that were extremely good. There were plenty of the brutalities that were extremely good, but there were some fatalities that, again, not gory, but I feel like they could have gone a little bit further. But again, when we're talking about a fighting game, the actual fighting part to it is probably the most important, and this game absolutely nails it. This is where newcomers, along with the oldies, everybody feels fantastic. Johnny Cage, Sonya, Raiden. Raiden, I think, is so much better in this game than he was in 9. It's not even freaking close, but there's just so much good, whether it's characters we're talking about from 9 or the newcomers. Cassie Cage, I think, is a great, great character. Some of the bigger characters, Kotal Khan, Farah, and Tor, right? These are very big, like, slow characters, but they are a lot of fun to play as. There's very, very few characters in this game that I would say, I don't even think there was any that I would say I didn't like. Like I said, Aaron Black, a little bit slower, but can use range attacks, can get in close. Just everybody is so good. Now, I can't speak again to the DLC characters, but beyond that, it was cool to see them like in the store page and stuff. I did stare at them for a while. I just didn't play as them, but no, that is, I think, the biggest kind of thing here. I think the consistency again in acting, and obviously visuals took a step up. Story, I think, took a little bit of a step down, but it's where it felt, like how it feels, and it feels so good. And I mentioned this in the beginning, I don't want to forget this, the quick time events. Look, I actually am quite a fan of quick time events in games. games. I don't need them to be overkill. I think there's plenty of games that do it really, really well or did it really well. Obviously, it was a fad, and I think by 2015, we were kind of exiting it, which is kind of weird that I think to 2011, I think to Mortal Kombat versus DC, which was even earlier, and I think, okay, well, they didn't have quick time, in their like cutscenes and stuff. In this game, as it seems like the industry had moved away, quick time events were like late 2000s, very early 2010s. God of War 3 being a really big one too. But then they kind of started to die down. So for 2015, for this game to have incorporated it so massively, like it's a big part. Now, it doesn't really matter. You can fail a lot of quick time events. It won't change any. Well, it changes what happens visually, which is very cool, but it doesn't change like the outcome that you're going to be fighting them. But I think it was really good. So not only did it visually look cool, but then it's like, okay, well, if you press these buttons, like you're going to see a pretty cool animation. And if you mess it up, you're probably going to, ultimately is if you press the right button, then they're going to get hurt. If you press the wrong button, then you're going to get hurt. But it's in the cinematic, ness of it all. So I thought it was fantastic. I guess the one other thing I don't know if I like, it's hard to judge because obviously we're 8 years past it, the crypt. Now, I've told you why I play these games. It's primarily for the story. Once the story ends, I try out any characters that I didn't play in the story. I play them versus an AI. That's how I've been doing these reviews. Sometimes I'll do the challenge towers or just towers in general, and that's kind of it. Now, obviously, every game in the Mortal Kombat franchise, at least the ones I've played so far, there's a big amount of legacy to it, right? So like concept art and all this stuff. When it comes to the crypt, I'm not massively against it. I actually think some parts of it are rather cool. I like the idea that like a spider can come up to you and you can slice and you'll get coins for that. Or there's tombs literally everywhere and you'll break them open. And I have no problem. Like I earned maybe like 80,000 coins just from the story mission. So I could open a fair amount of it just by that. I don't know how many real world dollars translates into coins, but I will say I'm not a huge fan of locking off the brutalities and fatalities, and this is something I wanted to test afterwards. So I did the crypt first, then I played some matches, I guess, with characters that I didn't play yet, right, like in the story, and what you find is, well, there's a lot of options to do fatalities and things like that, but so many of them are locked off. I think they only give you maybe one for each character, one fatality, but each one actually has like 3 or 4, but you unlock the other ones by going through the crypt. So, again, like it rewards you, I guess, for playing it because you can eventually get it, but it's, as far as I know, it's randomized, right? So if I'm looking, say, for like Sonya's fatalities, well, I don't know exactly how to get those in the crypt. I know to buy everything and eventually I'll get them, but I assume you could probably use real-world money. I actually don't know, but I will just say, without knowing, I'll just stay in my own lane here 8 years later. I'm not a massive fan of locking it all off for that. And I would say that in any year for any game, I'm not a huge fan. But overall, like the idea of the crypt, first person, turning left, right, forward, all that, like I do like it. I do think it's pretty darn cool. And beyond that, again, like I'm not that mad for these Mortal Kombat games not having too much. Most of it's the fighting. Most of it is because you're supposed to play online and you're supposed to win a lot or lose a lot or maybe both, right? There's not 50, single player options. There's a fair amount to do, but there's not so much. So in terms of the experience with the game, that's kind of where I stopped. And I'm very happy with it. Again, this is I would actually say by a mile, this is my favorite game in the Mortal Kombat franchise. Not my favorite game of all time. I really do think it's leaps and bounds above 9. I do prefer the story of 9. I think, and that's what's tough, I think I could see myself replaying 9 in the future because I did love that story so much. But there's a lot to like in this game, and it primarily is the feel. Anybody you're playing as in the single player feels good. When you're playing it afterwards, at least how I do it, right? Playing as the other characters, everybody feels good. It looks so good. And some big stuff, by the way, like they kill off characters in the single player that I really wasn't expecting. I guess that's why Mortal Kombat 1 gets to kind of reset everything because many characters were already dead. Some characters were brought back from that. Some characters weren't. And then even from the characters that were alive after 9, some of them died, like Quan Chi, etc. as well. It's like, oh my God, they're running out of cinematic character. So I'm excited to play 11, and then I'm very excited to see what they do with Mortal Kombat 1. So let me know what you all think in the comments below. Make sure, as always, like I said in the beginning, you're subscribed, bell icon turned on. Got 2 more Mortal Kombat games coming as videos here before Mortal Kombat 1. And of course, I'll be covering Mortal Kombat 1 on the main channel podcast now. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all on the next one.